Hello, welcome to the programme. We've been a bit Blades dominated just recently. Paul Heckingbottom and also Chris Basham have been on the show. Barry Bannon has answered that from the blue and white half of the city. But to square things off completely, we've got two famous former Sheffield Wednesday footballers with us today. And obviously for a very special reason in the case of one of them, Tommy Spurr. You may have read about Tommy recently, and certainly his son Rio, who's been in everybody's thoughts in football in this part of the world. And we'll talk to Tommy about his son and about the progress he's making in fighting a rare form of kidney cancer. But also on the show, somebody that Tommy knows, and mutually, I think they've come across each other in football. Jon Newsome, friend of the show, is back with us. Jon, welcome. Tommy, welcome. It's good to see you both. And Tommy, there's a lot of negative talk around football, and, you know, the bad things get highlighted. But there are plenty of good things to highlight, aren't there, in your case at the moment, in particular in relation to your son. It must have turned your life, though, completely upside down.
Yeah, it has. It's every parent's worst nightmare. The last sort of since April has just been, it's been hell. It's day-to-day constant worry of not knowing what the outcome is going to be for our son Rio, and we're just trying to do everything we can to give him a chance. Fingers crossed. He's one of the lucky ones that does manage to sort of react well to the treatment that he's having at the moment, and we don't need further treatment, but we're not willing to sit back and take that risk, because as we've been told by our consultant, the chances are against him. So we're doing all that we can just to give him that extra little bit of a chance, whether that be treatment abroad or anything. We just want to be prepared for that, to give him that chance.
And football is rallying round. You've been fundraising for some time now. You've got a special game coming up this weekend on Sunday, which is deserving of everybody's support. And Jon, as a father yourself, and indeed I'm a father, I think parents in particular's heart will go out to Tommy. As he says, it's every parent's worst nightmare, isn't it?
Oh wow, yeah. As he's just touched on there, you know, it is every parent's worst nightmare, and you can't even imagine what he's going through and what the family are going through and the day-to-day struggles that they have, because you know, like you've alluded to, Alan, you know, you're a parent, I'm a parent. You know, my kids are not kids anymore. They're 25 and 27 years old, but they've left the nest, they've left home, but I still worry about them. Still worry about them now. So I cannot imagine what Tommy and his family are going through.
No, that's the thing. It's something that we can't put ourselves in your place, Tommy. We really can't. And there's that phrase that we often use, you know, when something bad happens, that football's put into perspective. Most of us sort of, it trips off our tongue, and we don't fully appreciate what that means. But I guess you in particular and your family now absolutely do.
Oh, 100%. Things that you used to be concerned about and worried about, like you just alluded to, like there's more important things. And I think going back to your first sort of question about football rallying round, the support has been amazing, and ex-teammates giving up the time to come and support in charity football games we've had over here in Blackburn, and Preston lads it's been amazing. And like you said, there's Doncaster lads and Sheffield Wednesday lads coming to support us at the weekend, and the clubs themselves have given up their time and given us that opportunity to kind of put Rio's story out there to try and help us with the fundraising, because it's hard work. It's on top of the stress of what's going on in mine and my wife's head every day, of worrying, we're not sleeping. It's just been horrendous. But those bits of support does give us that bit of positivity that people are there for us, and you know, we have got that support with us.
Well, we'll talk obviously about the game that you've got coming up at Doncaster's Stadium, Doncaster Rovers, one of your former clubs, on Sunday. We'll talk about the lineup as well, and we'll also broaden it. I don't know if it's therapeutic, but we'll talk about the current football scene and what's going on. But brought a smile to your face there. We'll certainly broaden it out. But just before we do, 3 years old, how aware is Rio of what's going on?
He's a very bright 3-year-old. I think I said at nursery, he's a bit further on than some of the other kids. So he is aware of that something different's happening to him. We've tried to explain it, obviously not in the exact detail, but we said to him, look, we're going to be spending bits of time in hospital and you're going to be having your medicine, and like explain it to him in simple terms of what he's going through. He likes to know what's happening and where he's going and what's going to be coming up. So he's dealing with it unbelievably well. Like you said, kids are resilient, but he doesn't know fully the extent and seriousness of what he's got. And he's singing and dancing, and he's still being a little 3-year-old. And every day makes us proud. He goes into hospital and he bounds in and says, "I'm back." And he says thank you for his chemo after they've put it up and all the injections. And I think you're unbelievable. Like, you're going through all this and you can still have a smile on your face and still sing and still be a delightful little boy. And like, if he can still smile, then me and my wife still have to smile, because at the end of the day, we need to create memories along this journey as well, because we don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think kids teach us things at times, don't they? And
100%.
His bravery is inspiring. As I say, we will get on to the game. As a bit of light relief, you did smile when I suggested we would talk about football now, but I don't know how much time you've got to follow the game, and whether you still do, and whether you do find a sense of release in it.
I have done little bits. We've been to a couple of games. We've been to Hillsborough at the start of the season. We went to Doncaster a couple of weeks ago, and Rio was well enough to come with us and absolutely loved it. His eyes were just bulging out. He couldn't believe that this is where people played football, and he actually said, "Oh, Daddy used to do this." So I'm like, yeah, a long time ago, but yeah. No, it's nice to have a release like that, and like you say, watch. If I ever get time to watch a game, we'll watch a game, and we'll watch Wednesday when they're on, and keep track of how everyone's doing. So yeah, it is a release to focus on something different sometimes.
Yeah, well, John, it must be a great thing when your kids can see you play. It's not something that I've ever experienced, obviously, but. And Rio's missed out on you playing, Tommy, because really you retired relatively early, didn't you? John, you and Tommy, you go back, don't you?
Yeah. I think it was a bit of a surprise to you as well, Alan, wasn't it? But when I finished. I just turned 29 when I had to retire with my knee, so I was quite quite young. And obviously always wanted to stay in football, so I went and did my coaching badges, and whilst I was doing that, I started working in the academy down at Sheffield Wednesday, and I had a very gifted young midfielder in the middle of the park, Tommy Spurr, good left foot on him, up and down the pitch, and so yeah, Tommy was in my under 14s for a year, and then I was obviously delighted to see that he kicked on and fulfilled his potential and had a good career.
Well, he has. I mean, just to remind anybody who doesn't know, Sheffield Wednesday 2005 to 2011, Doncaster Rovers 2011 to 13, then Blackburn Rovers for 3 years from 2013, and finally Preston for 3 years as well until 2019. So quite a lot of former clubs there, Tommy, to keep an eye on for you.
Yeah, and obviously with all the help that they're all giving us at the moment and support, it's an added incentive for me to. Every club seems to have got a little bit closer to how I feel about them because of the help obviously they're giving us for Rio. So no, it's nice keeping a look at, and hopefully like they can all. Hopefully Donny can go up and Wednesday can go up and Preston are up and around it and Blackburn. So hopefully they can all have successful seasons this year.
Yeah, Blackburn in particular doing tremendously well. And of course, we've all got big hopes for the Owls. Talking of which, I mean, you came through there as a local product, and there haven't been too many since. In fact, I think you were one of the last really to come through from the academy to make a meaningful career. Why do you think that might be? Any thoughts?
Well, Palms is still going. Palms is the only person still there, but I'm not sure. I think at the time when there was myself, Mark Beavers, Sean McAllister, Richard Wood, I think different circumstances at the club at the time. I think finances weren't probably as strong as they have been over the last couple of years. So they kind of had to give the youth a chance. And I know it might sound a negative on our part, but it's an opportunity for us that I think that we took, and we grabbed it with both hands and loved every minute of it.
Yeah, John, have you any thoughts on that? You know, it is a criticism that's flung at your former club quite a lot, the non-production of... They are producing players, but they don't seem to be breaking through at Hillsborough. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I could spend all day talking about it, really. It's the first thing for me is it's facilities, you know, with that comes expenditure and finances. You know, when you look at, I mean, I came back to Sheffield Wednesday in 1996, March 96, and one of the statements that were tripped out to me at the time was that we're going to buy a new training ground this year. We're getting a new training ground, and here we are in 2022, and they're still at the same place with the same 2 pitches, 3 pitches, the dome, etc., etc. Which, you know, I mean, when I retired and they got some insurance money out of my knee, which was a bit of a contentious issue with me and the football club at the time, and I think the then chief exec Alan Sykes said, well, if it's any consolation, the money that we've got from your knees, put the dome up on the academy. Never call it Jon Newsome's dome, did he? But there you go. But they're still there, aren't they? You know, they're still there. They've never moved. You know, and you look across. You know, Sheffield United have got far better facilities, which is, I know, again, another contentious issue, was just up the road. But you know, obviously, my job and doing what I do now, I get out and look at young players, and I see some of the facilities that some of these clubs have, and it is beyond belief. You know, the academy structures, the pitches, the personnel, but it all comes at a price, Alan. You know, it all comes at a price, and I think that's why, you know, you look at football clubs and you scratch your head sometimes, because, you know, Mr. Chansiri's gone in there and he has thrown his money at the football club, but in my opinion, not necessarily in the right direction at times.
It's chicken and egg, perhaps. Sheffield Wednesday need to get promoted and need to be pushing on to look to get to the Premier League again before, possibly, Mr. Chansiri thinks, well, I've got to mix my priorities now. Do you see him heading in that direction if the club can start redeeming some of the expenditure that he's put out there?
I don't know. I mean, he's done it this year, hasn't he? He's put his money where his mouth is. You can't knock the fella for that. They need to be up into the Championship this season. They need to get promotion this season. But if that happens, can you see them facilitating, you know, a new training ground, building a structure and a base to kick on with? I don't know if they would, because obviously you've got to start investing in the playing squad. You've got to get better players in to try and stay in the Championship. So, is there ever a right time to put your hand in your pocket and start building, you know, new training facilities? I don't think there is. But I think sometimes you've just got to bite the bullet and realise that it's a 4, 5, 6, maybe a 10-year journey that you've got to go on, and you've got to put that money in. You've got to build that facility, and then you've got to see it out for the long term.
Yeah, I take your point. Can't see it into the Premier League realistically if they were to get there. But there is a bit of momentum, Tommy. I don't know how much you've seen of Sheffield Wednesday lately. Whether you know Darren Moore, whether you know, apart from obviously Liam Palmer, whether you know people down there.
Yeah, I've been in contact with Lindsay, who's the secretary there, who was there when I was there, and she speaks really highly of Darren Moore and what a good person he is, first and foremost, which I think goes a long way with especially footballers these days, that perhaps not as hard-skinned as perhaps back in Jon's day, and coming towards the sort of beginning of my day where the environment were completely different. But no, I've seen Wednesday a few times, and on the day they'll beat any team in League One. It's just that consistency, and they need to go up in the top two. I don't think the playoffs have been very kind to Sheffield Wednesday. I think they have to aim for that top two, and I think with the players that they've got, there's no reason why that they shouldn't be up in that top two. Definitely.
Yeah, the football environment has changed. You refer to that certainly from the start of your career, and even more, Jon, since the start of your career.
Oh, I mean, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? It's absolutely incredible. I was out having a walk this morning. I was listening to a podcast, and Sam Allardyce was on, and he was talking about when he first started in the game, and what went off in it, and I understand why it's changed. We all do. It's become more professional. There's more money in the game. Look at the staff members. Even Sheffield Wednesday, they've got 15, 20, 25 staff. When I was an apprentice, you had one manager and one assistant manager for the youth team, and then you had Howard Wilkinson, Peter Eustace, and once a week you had a goalkeeping coach come in and train the goalkeepers. So they had probably 4 or 5 staff in its entirety. Whereas now there's analysts, there's strength and conditioning coaches, there's physios, there's assistant physio, there's so many staff, and they can chuck so much money at it. The level has to the bar has to be risen, and that's what's happened. We just know that with that becomes it's the place to be, isn't it? Everybody wants to be involved in football. Non-football people want to be involved in football, and I think that's where it sometimes trips itself up a little bit, because you've got people involved in the game who don't really understand it and make decisions that are probably not best for football.
Yeah, certainly in terms of owners of some clubs, I think that's true. But I think the environment for players, the way players are treated, Tommy, I mean, you grew up in a much harder school, I would suggest, looking from the outside, than the young players of today.
Yeah, I think, well, one instance sticks out in my head when Lee Peacock was at Sheffield Wednesday, and I was a first-year scholar training with the first team, and I think I might have accidentally kicked him, and next time the ball came, I got an elbow straight across the front of my head, and I was laid out, and it just like, as if to say, no, you don't come up here, come up to the first team and start kicking people. But that would kind of just, and you just go on with it. You just get up and you're like, right, okay, I need to toughen up a little bit. That was kind of the message from that. But no, it's like Jon said, it's completely different now, and the attitudes and the way that they're brought up is completely different. I did a small amount of work with like some of the academies over where I live, and the environment is just completely different. How you have to talk to people is completely different, and it's just a different culture and a different way of learning for these young players now, that compared to when I played and when Jon played.
Is it for the better, Tommy?
I think in some ways, in some aspects, not all, but I think so. Some of the tougher learning curves that I went on, that example I just gave you, I think perhaps some lads nowadays might not react well to that. They might react in a way like, you can't do that, you can't touch me, you can't do this. But then in other ways, I think the shouting and bawling and swearing at people is perhaps gone, because lads nowadays are not going to react well to that. It's more of an arm around you and speaking maybe directly to them one-on-one rather than a group situation, because I think lads don't react well nowadays to being sort of crucified in front of the group as well. So I think that's another sort of subtle change that perhaps might work for the better.
Yeah, I think there's an awareness as well of mental health issues, John, which would never have been discussed, I would imagine, in your playing days.
No, mental health wasn't a buzzword, was it? You know, it wasn't at the fore. It wasn't even recognised in all reality, and it was tough. And you know, and they tested you. They tested you physically, and they tested you mentally, and they'd have a real dig at you, and like Tommy says, they'd ball you out. And I mean, I've seen coaches fight with players. You know, literally go for each other after the game, and you know, and at Sheffield Wednesday, the boxing gloves used to come out, and you didn't get fined if you had a fight with your boxing gloves on. And I mean, beggars belief now that would go on, but you know, compared to some of the lads who played, you know, years before me, you know, I'm lucky enough sometimes I work at Ellen Road and you know, chat with people like Paul Reaney and you know the stuff that they went through. So you know, we're soft compared to those lads, and that's a word that's always, Tommy's smiling now, but that's a word that's always used in football, you know, about being soft, and I think it's a word that's overused at times. But you know, the football has changed, and I think as Tommy alluded to, majority of the time it is for the better. We were lucky we didn't have to deal with social media and all the pitfalls of that, which is you know, it's another discussion, isn't it? But yeah, and you know, the right for, I think people always feeling that they have the right to voice their opinion, and there's a difference between having a right to voice your opinion and abusing somebody, and I think that's a blurred line, and I don't think any player should have to put up with abuse, but we knew that it happened back in our day, and you know, and it is changing slowly but surely. But so things are improving.
Good. Well, as we close towards the end of part one, we've got plenty more to discuss in part two. Just a reminder again, on Sunday, 3:00 at Doncaster Rovers Eco Power Stadium, there's a special fundraising game in aid of little Rio Spurr, and we'll talk a lot more about that in part two of the show. The players that are attending, some of them are dusting off their boots. I think Carlton Palmer's one of them. Mind you, yes. I think Carlton's about mid-50s. He looks like he could still play. He looks about 35 to me. John, you can't play. Your knees have gone, haven't they?
Yeah, I've no chance. My right knee's absolutely kaput. Yeah, that's what finished me, 22, 23 years ago, Alan. So yeah, it's gradually deteriorated to the point where it's not far off having to be replaced, in all honesty.
Okay, right. Well, I hope you can manage another 25 minutes in part two with Tommy Spurr and with Jon Newsome. Rejoin us in a couple of minutes. See you then.